Good afternoon and welcome to TVP World. You're watching Midday Report. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. The conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran is spreading across the Middle East. Washington has launched Tomahawk missile strikes. Israel says it has hit hundreds of targets in Iran and Lebanon, and regional capitals are coming under fire as casualties rise, and leaders warn the conflict would intensify.
America unleashes Tomahawk land attack missiles in its war against Iran, as Israeli armed forces continue their precision bombing. The Israel Defense Forces on Sunday said they had dropped 1,200 bombs on 500 Iranian targets since the attack began. As the conflict spreads further across the region, more than 30 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on Lebanon on Monday morning. The IDF attacked Hezbollah-controlled suburbs of Beirut after the Iran-backed group launched missiles and drones towards Israel in retaliation for the killing of Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei. The United Arab Emirates reports that 3 people have been killed since Saturday in Iranian strikes, while explosions have also been reported in Jordan, Iraq, Bahrain and Kuwait, where 1 person was killed by shrapnel from an intercepted missile. British forces, meanwhile, are responding to a drone strike at a military base in Cyprus. The IDF claims that it has killed Salah Assadi, the head of Iran's intelligence directorate, Mohammad Shiraz, head of the military bureau, and Hossein Jabal Amelian, head of the Organization of Defensive Innovation and Research. According to US President Donald Trump, 48 high-level Iranian officials have been killed so far. Trump said 4 US service members have lost their lives.
And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case. But America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization.
Iran's foreign minister was defiant over the prospect of regime change.
This reminds me of the previous war, 12-day war in last June, when they expected that in 2-3 days Iran would capitulate, would surrender itself, but it took 12 days for them to understand the point that Iran is not surrendering.
As the spreading conflict sows confusion, the US military said that Kuwaiti air defenses mistakenly shot down 3 US F-15 fighter jets flying in Iran-related operations. Officials said all 6 aircrew ejected safely, were safely recovered and are in a stable condition.
Air traffic across parts of the Middle East has been brought to a standstill as tensions in the Middle East escalate, leaving thousands of travelers stranded. Poland's foreign ministry says at least 10,000 Polish citizens are in the region as emergency hotlines are activated, and officials urge travelers to prioritize their safety.
The latest escalation between the United States, Israel and Iran has forced air traffic in the region to a halt. Many travelers have found themselves stranded in the Middle East. One of them is TVP World's director Michał Broniatowski, currently in Dubai.
In the morning, I checked whether there were any plans to open the airport in Dubai, and there was an information that they would do it by 3 o'clock. Today. It is already 3 o'clock. I opened the portal of the airport, and now they are saying as soon as we can have more information.
Airports in the region are also important transfer hubs. TVP World spoke to Jarek, a traveler who was meant to return from vacation in Thailand on Monday.
Everybody who is affected with their flights is very stressed, very tense. Most of the flights are cancelled. Some of them are suspended. People are still awaiting from counter proposals from airlines what to do on their flights. Either they will come back home in a later time or they should look for some alternatives.
The Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs estimates there are at least 10,000 Poles across the Middle East, as many of them have been attempting to get in touch with Polish officials in local consulates and embassies. An emergency hotline was launched. The ministry spokesperson advised Polish travelers in the Persian Gulf area to focus on safety.
Well, first of all, stay where you're safe. This is the most important message I can give our citizens right now. listen to local security services.
Most importantly, the ministry has urged Polish citizens in the region to register in the Odysseus system, which will allow them to stay in touch and receive crucial updates.
And now we are turning our attention live to the Pentagon, where the U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is addressing a press conference speaking on the issue of Iran. Let's take a look.
Well, good morning. We just finished an update with Admiral Brad Cooper, the CENTCOM commander, across the CENTCOM AOR, our leadership and troops, as you would expect, doing a fantastic job. 2 days ago, under the direction and direct orders of President Donald J. Trump, the Department of War launched Operation Epic Fury, the most lethal, most complex, and most precise aerial operation in history. For 47 long years, the expansionist and Islamist regime in Tehran has waged a savage, one-sided war against America. They didn't always declare it openly, except for their constant chants of death to America. They did it through the blood of our people. Car bombs in Beirut, rocket attacks on our ships, murders at our embassies, roadside bombs in Iraq and Afghanistan, funded and armed by Iranian Quds Force and IRGC killers. My generation of veterans carry the names of brothers who never came home, brothers butchered by Iranian-backed roadside bombs and well-armed militias, thousands of our own. We didn't start this war, but under President Trump, we are finishing it. Their war on Americans has become our retribution against their Ayatollah and his death cult. It took the 47th president, a fighter who always puts America first, to finally draw the line after 47 years of Iranian belligerence. He reminded the world, as he has time and time again, being an American means something unbreakable. If you kill Americans, if you threaten Americans anywhere on earth, we will hunt you down without apology and without hesitation, and we will kill you. President Trump has also been very consistent. Crazy regimes like Iran, hell-bent on prophetic Islamist delusions, cannot have nuclear weapons. It's common sense. Many have said it, but it takes guts to actually enforce it, and our president has guts. Iran's stubborn and self-evident nuclear pursuits, their targeting of global shipping lanes, and their swelling arsenal of ballistic missiles and killer drones are no longer tolerable risks. Iran was building powerful missiles and drones to create a conventional shield for their nuclear blackmail ambitions. Let me say that again.
And we will be following up on the press conference on future editions. But in the meantime, back to our usual programming. The European Union is calling for maximum restraint in the escalating Iran conflict, with Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas urging full respect for international law after emergency talks among member states. Our correspondent, Zuzana Jurek, brings us more live from Brussels. So, Zuzana, can you tell us what are some of the comments being made?
Good afternoon, Ben. I think before we get to the actual commentary and what the European Union is trying to work up as its collective responses, I think it's important to underline what the current situation is when it comes to the effects it has on member states of the European Union. Since this morning, we've been hearing reports about Shahed drones which have targeted the British Royal Air Force bases in Cyprus. We know that since then, also additional drones have been intercepted. In response to that, we've seen Greece that has come out. The Greek Defence Minister has stated that additional reinforcements will be sent to guard the territory, the island, with 2 frigates and 2 additional fighter jets being sent over there. Additionally, however, we have seen from the Cypriot president himself stating that despite these attacks, despite these provocations and strikes, whether they be accidental or whether they be intentional, we don't know that yet. We have heard the Cypriot president stating that he is calling for maximum restraint, as you've stated previously, when it comes to EU's responses as well, and additionally that this will not serve as drawing Cyprus into any type of geopolitical conflict or a war in the region.
We find ourselves in a region of particular geopolitical instability, with a lot of challenges and problems, which is experiencing an unprecedented crisis. I want to be clear, our country is not participating in any way and does not intend to be part of any military operation. We remain committed to the humanitarian role we have served throughout this time, always as part of the solution and not the problem.
Now, Greece has not been the only country that has vowed defensive responses when it comes to shielding the interests of the EU. We've equally heard from the E3 countries, that is France, Germany and Britain, which airbase has been affected, stating that they will will not restrain their defensive responses to the indiscriminate targeting by Iran. But at the same time, when it comes to these collective responses by the EU, well, it's important for us to know that the EU is not really a big player when it comes to this balance of power whatsoever. And so since the beginning, since Saturday, when the initial reports of the strikes perpetuated by US and Israel against Iran have emerged, they've been stating that restraint and maintaining a diplomatic dialogue is of the utmost importance. That is now still the sentiment that has been expressed by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, even whilst the EU still scrambles to think of more adherent responses, more collective responses, and what the main dialogue, main line of argumentation will be when it comes to what the EU what the stance that the EU takes in this situation. But now let's take a listen to Ursula von der Leyen's statement.
The only lasting solution is a diplomatic one. And this means a credible transition for Iran, the definite hold to both the nuclear and ballistic programs, and an end to destabilizing activities in the region. This afternoon, we will discuss the overall situation in a meeting of the Security College here in the European Commission, because from energy to nuclear, from transport to migration to security, we must be prepared for the fallout from these recent events.
Now, we know that the commissioners of the EU will meet today to discuss this collective response, but we can expect it won't be an easy task whatsoever. We know that the EU is fairly divided when it comes to its responses, with some member states, particularly Trump's closest allies in Europe, including the Czech Republic, being staunchly pro the latest escalation, or at least expressing sympathy for the US, stating that a regime such as the one in Iran should never have the capability to develop its nuclear weapons. At the same time, however, we've heard from other nations in the EU, including Spain and the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, who has been more critical over the US's latest attacks and latest acts in the Middle East, stating that this is a blatant act of escalation, and it comes at a time when the non-proliferation discussions between the US and Iran have been undergoing. So we know that the EU will continue to peddle a way forward when it comes to building up a collective response. However, as I mentioned, this won't be an easy task whatsoever. Ben?
Thank you so much, and we'll have to wait for a coherent response from the European Union. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your update. Appreciate it. Amid the escalating tensions in the Middle East, social media influencers in Dubai have been sharing their experiences online. Content creators living or visiting the city posted about how the situation is affecting their daily lives, prompting mixed reactions from audiences.
Cancelled flights and baby moons, holidays and shirtless pool sessions ruined. This is the reality of influencers in Dubai. The content creator Mecca has suffered several attacks in the fallout of the US-Israel-Iran conflict. Some influencers are stranded, others in the middle of trying to get out, or determined to stay in Dubai. All share their experience and advice on how to remain safe. Some have more tone-deaf words of wisdom to spare.
As you know, there is a war on, and there's drones and missiles being shut down over Dubai. You're asking about our experience of this. Well, this morning we woke up and went to the pool. So we can say it's actually pretty normal out here. Friends in the region, I know this is a scary and stressful time, but please remember, no matter what, this is still not a reason to text your ex.
Influencers posting from Dubai have been widely criticized for their insensitive comments and their timing, even by their own audiences.
And with that, we conclude this edition of Midday Report. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.